So it's been over a decade since Watchmen came out in theatres for the first time, and when it originally released, it was met with mixed reviews across the board. There were people who saw the powerful messages, quality filmmaking, and unique adaptation behind the film, while others disliked the film for these very reasons. Since its release, many people have discussed the approach of Watchmen after rewatches, and in this video, I'm going to be adding my own thoughts towards why I believe Watchmen was underrated for its time, and why I personally appreciate the key elements of the film today. I am covering Watchmen in the build-up to the release of Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead, and I have covered a lot of his work on the channel over the last few months, so I will be looking at more films by the director as time passes. If you want to keep up to date with all of this content, then don't forget to subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoy this video, remember to give it a like rating. But without further ado, let's dive into the reasons why I believe Watchmen was ahead of its time. So in 2007, director Zack Snyder took on the task of adapting Alan Moore and Dave Gibbons' Watchmen. Famous for transforming DC Comics, Watchmen had a troubled history of making it onto the big screen, but when we reached the year of 2009, it was finally released. The reaction to the movie was polarizing, with some loving the film for its visceral atmosphere and others not liking this particular approach. But years later, after the continuing growth of the superhero genre, Watchmen continues to be talked about by fans and even by some who have changed their opinion on the film. Zack Snyder's Watchmen came during a range of darker comic book movies like The Dark Knight, and it was the anti-hero film with real-world themes, adult situations, and moral complexity. It wasn't afraid to ask a lot of the questions we think about while watching the senseless violence that dominated many of the blockbusters of then and now. But how does Watchmen feel now that we're an audience guided by the moral subjectivity of something like The Avengers? Well, Watchmen is set in a parallel 1985 in which heroes existed before the US government banned them, and in the opening scene, one of the ex-superheroes of the old team is murdered, and a former member of his team decides he's going to solve the crime. What follows is a comic book adaptation of intriguing moments and characters, a visual storytelling feast, and relations to relevant issues that are even more prominent in today's world. For me, the first of many great aspects of Watchmen starts with the adaptation of Dr. Manhattan, and few fictional characters remain as perplexing as he does. Here is a being who is omnipotent, yet limited by determinism. He can see the future, yet he gets surprised. He looks like a human, yet acts like an alien. And he is worshipped like a god, yet remains controlled by man. Bringing this character to the big screen was no easy task, but Zack Snyder, alongside his visual effects supervisor John DJ, cinematographer Larry Fong, and actor Billy Crudup, managed to do it. Dr. Manhattan was more than just a dazzling example of CGI, and however, he was a philosophical being that elevated the movie above the constraints of a superhero film. His questions about the nature of humanity and ultimate conclusion that miracles are more common than we think make for some of the movie's best moments, and also ones that we want to grapple even after the credits roll. I feel like I notice something new that the character says every time I watch the film, and with his dialogue being delivered so quickly, it's almost a perfect fit for a character that is beyond but also behind everyone else. Snyder took risks with the film, and the way we see the movie come together through the events of Dr. Manhattan is something that really helps to elevate these risks. And speaking of risks, this is my next point. It is a well-known fact that Hollywood is not as willing to take investment risks as it was back in the day. Movies cost a lot to produce and distribute, and even if there are no guaranteed profits to be made, then you can expect a project to be put at the back of the list. And it was a miracle that Watchmen even got greenlit, considering that it was rated R, starred a cast of relatively unknown actors, and had a budget of over $100 million. But add onto the reasons that it included graphic violence, sexual content, and social political themes, and you have a movie that did what many other entries in the superhero genre failed to do, and that was taking risks. For better or worse, Watchmen faithfully adapted most of the elements from its famous comic, pushing them into the landscape of today, making it an example of a comic book adaptation that situates in its own list. Moving on, we get a display of relevant and ongoing themes such as rural decay, classicism, and nuclear acceleration. Every single one of these issues was major when Alan Moore first wrote Watchmen, and has only gotten worse in the decades since. Characters like the comedian Rorschach and the second Night Owl all represent different sides of this society. In particular, the comedian has come to view everything as a joke, taking advantage of situations as they arrive because he feels the traditional man cannot do anything in the face of government decisions. Night Owl 2, on the other hand, is much more optimistic, thinking that they can make the world a better place. Rorschach falls in between these two characters, sharing the comedian's cynical nature, but also believing that one can work to create a better tomorrow, no matter how minuscule the efforts are. We see these same factions play out in modern politics, where anti-authority and authority continue to clash in sometimes violent ways. Watchmen essentially touched on a lot of the themes that still remain powerful to this day, and when a work of fiction, especially a superhero adaptation, does that, it means it has aged very well. Now sure, a lot of this was taken from the graphic novel, but to adapt it into a visual and audio medium with the style and flavour that Zack Snyder brought, it is definitely something to celebrate. As stated above, Watchmen is both famous and infamous for attempting to be as faithful to the original graphic novel. With the exception of the ending, many scenes from the film were lifted straight out of the comic, with Snyder literally using Gibbons' panels as the film's storyboards. In doing so, Watchmen remains the only superhero film to genuinely feel like a graphic novel. Everything about it, from the production design, to the costumes, to the VFX, to the editing, were all created to evoke the sense that you were reading the Watchmen comic in motion picture form. Something genuinely great when you consider all superhero films are based off comic books. Zack Snyder's style is almost the definition of a popular or sensational auteur. From his slow motion to his heightened and realistic take on CGI, he has a distinct look and feel to all of his projects. When watching the film today, it's hard to believe that these special effects are not from the modern era. It's a beautiful and stylistic movie that has frames that could be framed as paintings. And we see this continue in his most recent work with the DCEU, making us question superheroes by using almost religious-like imagery to get us talking about the many ideas and events in the movie. One of the things I personally adore about his films is how he uses many longer takes to echo this effect that I was discussing. The traditional CGI superhero film has a quick pace to the edit, and the shorter takes don't always impact the audience in correlation with what's going on. Even in Watchmen, we get longer visual takes and appropriately framed images that breathe while they are on screen, and even if you come away disappointed with one of his films, the imagery and filmmaking always sticks in the back of your mind. It's art that lasts, and one that truly understands what medium it is a part of. The final point which I want to make is one that applies to some of my favourite superhero films of all time. Movies like The Dark Knight, Logan, Joker, Captain America the Winter Soldier are examples of films that all do this, and Watchmen is no exception. This revolves around the approach of grey characters and storytelling. Superhero movies these days tend to fit into a structure of good versus evil. It is an ancient conflict that has led to some of the greatest myths and stories ever told, but it can also simplify things to create a justifiable situation. Even among sympathetic villains, there is usually a trait that makes them just evil enough to make the hero look considerably better. What was great about Watchmen and the films I listed before was that it turned this structure on itself. Superheroes were now vigilantes, punching criminals actually broke bones, and doing this for a long time mentally wore down on both the heroes and society in general. Beating up gangs while making a community safer did nothing to stop the larger political threats that loomed above. Watchmen showed us how vigilantes can do as much harm as good in the bigger scale of things, and how this understanding can create muddled yet strangely rational thoughts about the upcoming future. When a film has done this, it has pushed beyond the boundaries of regular action fare. And don't get me wrong, I think Watchmen has issues like in its pacing and screen time development, but the heart of the movie and its themes are always there to be discussed throughout the entire running time. It makes the film interesting and something to talk about long into the future, rather than be a film which we already have a full answer to after we've watched it once. These are the types of films that I consider to be ahead of their time, and they lodge themselves into pop culture to be investigated a little deeper. But that was my video essay for Zack Snyder's Watchmen and why I think the film was underrated. It's all subjective, and again, I'm sure many will disagree and not like the approach that Snyder went for, but that's what I have took away over the years of rewatches. I did like the film when it came out, but over time, it has only got better, with more meaning on every revisit. We'll have to see how Army of the Dead turns out when it releases later this month on Netflix, and I will be doing videos on the film, so look out for all of the content that I post. Let me know down below what your thoughts are towards 2009's Watchmen, and do you agree with the points I have raised in this breakdown? For more videos on Zack Snyder's work, including the director's cut of Justice League and Army of the Dead when it releases later this month, then subscribe to the channel and turn on your notifications. Also, if you enjoyed this video, remember to leave a like rating. But anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. I've been Cortex, and as always, make some noise.